It's like a roller coaster ride waiting in line. All right, I'm Chuck, as it says on the screen. I'm married, I'm 45 years old. I have 10 plus kids. Five of them are biological, and the rest are additions that I love them all the same, though. So before I tell you guys my story, I want to say a prayer. Lord, thank you. Thank you for this moment. Thank you for everybody here. I ask that you open their hearts and let them hear what I have to say and feel it, and know that this is my true testimony, Lord. In the name of Jesus Christ, I pray. So, I was born in 1976 at St. Luke's Hospital. My mom was 22 years old. That was ancient years ago to me, but I didn't know her that well. And my father was not around. He was kind of absentee in my life at that point. My mom was a heroin addict, and so she was not the best mom. She would leave me at the babysitter for weeks at a time, and I kept going in and out of foster care. So the state took me from my mom, and my grandma said, "Hey, somebody's got to adopt this kid, or he's going to be out of our family." So my aunt and uncle in Kentucky came up and adopted me, and they moved me down to Kentucky, and there I had a whole family. Now, at this point, I'm like 18 months old, so I really don't know what's going on. Honestly, I remember the plane ride. I remember putting gum in my mom's hair because this lady gave it to me because I was crying or probably talking, because I don't never shut up. But she gave me this gum, and I remember my mom fell asleep and I was bored, so I started putting it in her hair. And I remember that. I was 18 months old. And when I got to Kentucky, I didn't have the concept of knowing that I had parents prior. So I was a little kid. So as I grew up, I had a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister, aunt, uncle, grandparents. And this was my family, and this is what I knew. Like, these are the people that I knew. I actually forgot about everything in Wisconsin and just started being a little southern country boy, walking around with cowboy boots and no shirt, no clothes probably. But I spent a lot of time with my grandma. And that was because my house wasn't, I went from my dysfunctional family here to my dysfunctional family there. Like, my family was great, but my dad had issues. He was my adopted dad. I don't want you guys to get confused, because my story is like a Quentin Tarantino movie. If you don't pay attention, you are going to be lost. So my adopted dad had substance abuse issues too. And he tried his best to work through it, but throughout all this, around 6 years old, him and my adopted mom got divorced. And she was leaving. Actually, my dad and my brother left, and we're driving to Tennessee, and I threw a fit because I was a spoiled brat and I wanted to be with my dad. So I cried and cried and cried, and she said, "Come get this kid." So away to Tennessee we went, and they ended up moving. My mom and my sister and them ended up moving back to Wisconsin, and I stayed in Kentucky with my dad and my brother. And about a year later, my dad remarried. And that was different for me. So now I'm dealing with my dad and mom getting divorced, my adopted dad, my adopted mom getting divorced. I'm going to go over that a lot because I have to. And then he remarried another lady, and she came with a son. So now I got a bonus brother. And then he ended up getting her pregnant. So now I got a bonus sister too. And we all just kind of meshed together, but he still had his issues going on in life. So at 7 years old, this is where it gets tricky. At 7 years old, my Aunt Marie, who is my biological mom, came to Kentucky. Now, she was a part of my life my whole life, but I knew her as my Aunt Marie. And she said, "I want to take him roller skating." Well, she didn't. She took me to a bar. She told me I was her son and confused me. Honestly, I was like, whatever. I was 7, so I didn't care. So I was like, okay, we're at a bar. I just need money for the pinball machine. But yeah, that really kind of started raising questions in my life. Like, wait a second. So if my mom's not my mom, is that my dad? No, that's not my dad. So if my mom's not my mom, my dad's not my dad, what is wrong with me? Right? So through my life, I grew up wondering, like, was I not good enough? Like, did people not want me around? And I had this feeling in me growing up because I just couldn't figure it out, and it took me a long time to get over that, probably 40 years, probably. But it took me a while to get through that part. But anyways, like I said before, my dad had substance abuse issues, and he was fighting. He fought for a long time in his life. And on March 20th, 1988, he passed away. I was 11 years old. And I remember that day like it was nothing. I came home. I used to ride motorcycles, and I came home. I still ride motorcycles. I came home and to get my motorcycle helmet. And I seen him sitting on the couch. And I left. I was gone the whole day. I was riding with my friend. We were on these tracks and whatever. I was 11, so it was cool stuff to me. But when I came back, one of my neighbors had stopped me and said, "Your dad's sick. He went to the hospital." And he's like, "You got to come to my house." So me and my friend went to their house, and I seen my grandpa's car driving down the street, and I just took off running because I kind of felt like they were holding me captive a little bit. But at the moment, I really didn't know what was going on. And I ran to the car. It was my brother's friend, and he drove me to my grandparents' house where I met. My brother was there. I seen a bunch of cars there. And my brother came up and he told me my dad died. So at 11, I'm devastated because I already feel some type of way because I'm adopted, and I already feel like people are leaving me behind. So it's like, here I have separation anxiety, and I'm just not dealing with it well. So at this point, I moved in with my grandparents. I loved it. I mean, I did. I love my grandparents. I had to finish out the school year, and my grandfather came to me one day, and he said, "I need to talk to you. You have to move to Wisconsin." That was hard for me because my whole life, all I knew was Kentucky. I knew my friends, my family, everybody I had was in Kentucky. I hated coming to Wisconsin for the summers because it wasn't the same. My family here wasn't the same. The people here weren't the same to me. They looked at me different. I felt like my family looked at me like they looked at my mom, so they had the hate for me that they had for her. It just wasn't a good move for me. But my adopted mom told my grandfather, if you don't make him move to Wisconsin, you won't see your other grandkids. So I had no choice, and I wasn't raised to be selfish. So I said, "All right, I'll go." She said to me things like, "Your whole family's here. They love you. They miss you. They want you around." And I moved here. We lived on 43rd and Morgan. Well, we lived on 27th and Howard. Then we moved to 43rd and Morgan, and I shared a room with my biological mom, which I thought was awesome. I thought that was pretty cool because I knew she loved me. But I'll tell you what, I grew up in a town of 500 people in Keville, Kentucky, and I went to the same school my whole life. And from first grade to sixth grade, my friends were still the same friends I had, and we all did the same thing. And I lived in a small community, and it was what I knew. And not to sound funny, it was an all-white school, an all-white community. And then I moved to Milwaukee, and I went to Audubon Middle School. And I'm in this big city, million people, all different races, and I didn't know how to act or be around anybody because it was a culture shock for me. I hated it. And I just didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want anything to do with Wisconsin. And to top it all off, December 6th, 1991, my grandpa died in Kentucky. And he taught me my man skills growing up. He taught me about business. He taught me that I can be anything I want to be. And that hurt me when he died, because I always thought I'm going to come back to Kentucky. I'm going to live with my grandma and grandpa one day. And he passed away. So, right then, the gloves were off. I just rebelled. I didn't want to be here, and I only know how to do one thing, and that's act with action. So I just rebelled. I started drinking. I started doing drugs. I got arrested at 13 for a stolen car. I got caught with alcohol, guns. I was in and out of detention. I was horrible. I was like poster child for the kid you want to hit in the middle of the street, like bad. When I was 16, my mom called me because I didn't stay at home. So my adopted mom called me when I was 16. I think I checked in with her, either way. And she said, "We're moving to Nevada. Do you want anything out of the house?" So telling me I'm not invited. And the rest of my family that was here had already migrated to Nevada. So the only person that was here that I had left was my sister. And because I was the way I wasn't on talking terms. And now at this point, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, I'm everything. And if you guys know anything about them people, when we're doing bad things, we stay away from the people we care about the most because we don't want to hurt them. So I stayed away, and really nobody wanted me around anyways. So I ended up going to Ethan Allen, Wales. I was in and out of DT and jail till I was 18 years old. And at 18, I had my first child. So here I am, 18. I was adopted. My biological mom was an addict. I found out I was adopted when I was 7. I grew up in Kentucky. My dad died when I was 11. I was forced to move to Wisconsin. My grandpa died. I started using drugs and alcohol, in and out of jail. First kid born at 18. For the next 20 years, I created havoc everywhere I went. 20 years of straight chaos. By 19, I was a felon. By 20, I was already in adult prison. Talk about shock. 20 years old, 9 years earlier, I lived in a community of 500 people, and I used to ride my motorcycle around and go to church on Sundays and sing This Little Light of Mine. And here I am, walking into a prison with killers, murderers, and rapists. And I wasn't this big, I'll tell you that. I probably weighed 112 pounds. But nevertheless, I wasn't a good guy, and I wore it. I had that attitude of I had to be the baddest person, I had to be the worst person. So I had a mouth, I had an attitude to back it up. But worst of all, I was a bad father. I was a bad friend to my friends. I was a horrible son. I was just a bad person, all in general. Like anybody that I came across, I either interrupted their life or used them to my own benefit. In 2007, my biological mom died. Before she passed away, I was able to give her some peace and forgive her for the way that I grew up. And I gave her that peace. I wrote her a note. She went in for surgery. I wrote her a note and said it. And then we were talking afterwards, and I told her in person that I loved her. Because out of all the things that were happening in my life, my whole life, she's one of the people I knew loved me. Regardless of everything she was going through, and regardless of everything that I had been through in the time that we were apart my whole life, when she looked at me, I felt it and I knew it. In 2008, I met my biological family. She told me who my dad was before she passed away. I searched them up. I had been searching for them forever. They're good people. They're Christian people. They're great. I talk to them today. I'm pretty close with them. Not my dad so much, but I'm working on it. I forgive him too. I told him like a month ago. In 2010, my adopted mom passed away. And that was a sad day because it was like another chapter closed in my life where I didn't get much closure there because I didn't ask for forgiveness and I didn't forgive her for anything. But yet, I'm still adopted and I'm still wondering why nobody wanted me around my whole life. Like, what did I do? But at this point, I can imagine I'm showing them why nobody wants me around. I'm giving them a reason, and I want me around. I'm still in and out of jail. I'm still drinking and doing drugs, in and out of prison. And I didn't know how to change. I knew that I didn't want to be like this, but it was all I knew, and it was the person that I had made myself be. In December 30th, 2016, I was released from prison. And I walked out with a good mentality, but as soon as I got through the gate, I was the same old Chuck. Same old person doing the same old things. 2 weeks after I got out, on January 14th, 2017, my grandma died. This was hard for me because when I was in prison, I prayed that I could make it because I knew she was fading, and I prayed that I could make it out to see her and to spend time with her. She wrote me these beautiful letters while I was in prison, and that was a hard day for me. But being Chuck, what did I do? I went out and partied. I went out and celebrated my grandma's life the way that I always celebrated everything. I was an alcoholic. I'm an addict. I was looking for a reason to drink and to party and to do drugs and do what I could do. And guess what I did? I went to jail that night. I got arrested for peeing outside downtown Milwaukee, and I was on parole. So they held me. I missed my grandma's funeral. That was hard for me. And when I look at my family, I can't look at them the same because I missed my grandma's funeral. But it sparked something in me. It sparked something in me to plan my next move. And I'm like, I got to get out of here. Where I was at wasn't good. The house I was living in was just party. People wanted to party, and it just wasn't anything I wanted. So I asked my friend, hey, can I live in your basement? Can I just move and get out of this house? And he's like, yeah, come on. So I went over there. Same old Chuck. Once I get comfortable, I started doing the same thing, drinking, drugs, whatever. And I just kept going through this cycle. One day I woke up. It was on a Tuesday, and I had been partying Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. My phone's going off. My boss is calling me. He's sitting right over there. My boss is calling me, texting me, where you at? The employees are calling me. We need materials. My bank texts me, overdrew your account. I was broke, busted, and disgusted. I couldn't deal with it no more. I laid there and I cried. And I wanted to kill myself. So on this day, I planned my suicide. For the first time in my life, I felt fear. Because this is one thing that I was going to do. And I knew it. I was scared because I had it in me to do it. But before I did this, me and God needed to have a talk. I got on my knees like I was a kid, kneeled over my bed, clasped my hands, bowed my head, and I didn't ask him for anything. I just told him how I felt. I felt so broken and alone. I just didn't want to continue living. I was just crying, why, God? Why has everyone left me? Even you, God, why? I can't do this anymore. Where were you when I needed you? And I'm just crying. I just wanted it to be over, the pain, because I've pleaded to God so many times, but they were false prayers. I would cry before court and beg God, oh, don't let me go to jail, I'll do better. And he would do it. And then I would, same old Chuck. And this feeling came over me, and God spoke to me. He said, I never left you. You were never alone. I was there when your dad died. All the times you were arrested, I was with you when your grandma died. When you thought you were alone, I was there. And at that moment, I felt different because I used my life as an excuse and crutches for being adopted and all these things. And why did everybody leave me? And what about my parents? And he just spoke to me. You have a parent. You're a child of God. I wasn't sure what my next step was, but I knew something had to change. The next day I had to go see my parole officer, and I felt different. Like I didn't feel the way I felt the day before. Like I didn't want to kill myself. I actually forgot about it, to be honest. I didn't even think about it. Like it was washed away from my thoughts. And I had to see my PO, and I went in and I seen her, and she gave me a P test, and I was dirty. And I don't know what you guys know or your background, but when you drop dirty and you're on parole, you go back to jail. You go back to prison. You're supposed to. And I cried to her and just kind of never did that in my life. I was always the same old Chuck who would be like, I will, let's go. And she said, get help, or I'll get help for you. You don't want the help I'm going to give you. And I honestly feel like God opened that door for me because I should have went back to jail. So I did. I called Rogers Memorial, started a program the next day, and I completed it. Oh, man. That's some sad stuff. That's hard. Let me tell you what God's been doing for me. In 2017, he woke me up. What do you mean you want to kill yourself? We got work to do. 2018, I was starving. I didn't know what to do. He sent me to Root River Church to be fed. Pastor Scott said, if you're not living for God, you're not living. In these are tears of joy. In 2019, Pastor Scott married Danielle and I, right where I stand right now. He blessed us and made it official in God's eyes. In 2020, I successfully completed parole. I had never completed parole in my life. In 2021, I got out of my way, started being a doer. 2022, I bought a house. I wrote my testimony, asked one to let me share it on Sunday, and here I stand, a child of God. Born again, a new man, a new life. The old me is gone. He ain't coming back. But I know a lot of people are like, why would you do it on this day? And I want you guys to know that the Tuesday I wanted to kill myself was May 29th, 2017, 5 years ago to this very day. Today I'm 5 years sober, 5 years free from my old self, my old ways, my old restraints. I owe it all to God. I couldn't change. I wouldn't change. I refused. But he gave me the strength and wisdom to get up and get out of my way. The old me wasn't working. And look what God did for me in 5 years. So I got 3 things for you guys today to take from this. 1, you're not alone. Never. In Isaiah 41:10, it says, "Do not fear, I am with you. I am God. I will strengthen you, help you, and uphold you with the right hand of righteousness." See, God puts people in your life, and you don't know why he puts them in your life. It doesn't mean they're permanently in your life, but he puts them in there for a reason. I want to tell you about my grandma. My grandma introduced me to Jesus. She prayed nonstop. This lady would pray me to sleep. I'd wake up and she'd still be praying. All she talked about was God. And when I was a kid, she told me I was going to grow up and do this one day. I never knew. But one thing she did was she knew that my house wasn't the best house. So she would call me every night and tell me good night and pray with me before bed. And when I had to move to Wisconsin, she would still call. But she would say this thing to me: "Have you been going to church?" Well, I grew up in Kentucky, Southern Baptist Church. There's a lot of Catholic churches up here. They're good churches, but I wasn't used to it, right? So I needed something different. And I would go back and visit from time to time. And when I was a kid, she took me to this place in this city called Paducah, Kentucky. We went to this church thing. It was at like a civic center, and they preached, and it was so awesome. And I used to talk about it all the time to my grandma and tell her, I love that church. I wish I could find a church like that. And in 2008, I want to say my friend here, Angie, took me to Oak Creek Assembly of God, and I loved it. It was so awesome. And I could not wait for my grandma to call me, because I had been so far away from God that I know that that's what my problem was now. But when she called, I actually think I called her, and I was like, "Hey." And she's like, "What you know?" "Not much." And I'm waiting. She's like, "You been praying?" "Yep." "You go to church?" "Oh, yeah, Grandma, I found this church." And she's like, "Oh, tell me about it." And I was like, "Oh, Pastor Brooks' message was strong, and I felt like I could do cartwheels down the aisle, and I floated out of the church, and all these things." And she was like, "What's the name of it?" And I said, "Oak Creek." And she's like, "What denomination?" I said, "Assembly of God." And she said, "That's where I took you when you were a kid." I still wasn't listening to God, though. At that point in my life, I wasn't ready for it. And I know my grandma's in heaven looking at me right now, happy. But I can guarantee 2 things that are happening in heaven right now. 1, it's clean, real clean. 2, everybody's acting accordingly. Because my Uncle John's still down here, and when she calls him, everybody has to act accordingly anyways. But the craziest thing is that same girl, Angie, that took me to Oak Creek Assembly of God, introduced me to this church too. Because God puts people in your life to show you the way. And he put those people in my life to show me this way right here. Second thing I have for you is don't be afraid. Psalms 56:3 says, "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you." When I wanted to kill myself, I didn't know what to do. I had a plan. I was going to do it. And I've never been a big talker. I'm a man of action, and I had it planned out. And then I turned to God, because it was probably my faith that was in the background that led me to vision what he had in store for me. Third thing I have for you is let God change the way you think. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, the new is here. I think different. I'm a different man. I'm a different husband. I'm a different father, different employee, different friend. I'm a different human being. I'm a doer, just not a sayer, not just a sayer. So let my testimony be the living proof of the power of God and what he can do in your life. Thank you. I'll close this with a prayer. Lord, thank you for the work you do. Thank you for showing up when we don't expect it. Thank you for the vision that you give us. I ask that you come in this room right now and just heal some hearts. Let them feel you, Lord. I pray that no one ever has to go through what I've been through, but if they do, I pray that their outcome is similar or the same or better. Thank you for this moment, this church, these people. In the name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.